Hello, thank you ever so much for joining me. I can actually see you much more clearly now. We had just a couple of little tech issues at the beginning there, but you're looking crystal clear now. I can see your beautiful face. So, Rachel, obviously you are a member of this club, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. So I've had a brief look through your application form, and I was saddened to read that you lost your husband to suicide. We had a little chat before we switched the mics on, and it is sadly, one of the common causes of death with women, that particularly with women that I'm speaking to, have lost their husbands. And I guess it's got so much stigma attached to it, which is an additional burden when you lose your husband. So, and also, I will let you tell your own story. I'm not going to tell the whole thing for you, but you were pregnant at the time, which is just horrible. I'm so sorry. So I guess, Rachel, I'm going to hand over the floor to you, and tell me a little bit about Ant and how you met and what your lives were like leading up to this kind of horrible moment in time. But I'm guessing there were some really happy times as well, and I want to kind of make sure we talk about those too. So I guess really, when you're ready, just tell me a little bit about your story, my friend.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, with you saying about the happy times, I think that was the worst thing about it, Rosie. It was because we'd been married a year. We just bought our new home just over a year ago as well. Like, it was our dream home, and yeah, we had a baby on the way. So it was just such a massive shock that, I thought we had it all.
Literally, like, meant to be the happiest time in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, previous to getting married, we've been together about 8 or 9 years. We'd had such an amazing life, just loads of fun. We didn't meet in Ibiza, but it was kind of through Ibiza. He worked with my best friend there as a holiday rep. And our lives just revolved around sort of like clubbing and music and traveling and going on holiday and basically like just having ourselves to worry about. And it was coming to the time, we were sort of growing up a bit. We got married, bought a home, and it was time to settle down. And we were literally just about to embark on a whole new chapter of our lives together, and a really exciting one. And yeah, then that happens, and yeah, it's just so complicated and so confusing.
So you guys, obviously, you say met through sort of your love of dance music and Ibiza. I'm ashamed to say I've never been to Ibiza. I'm going to go before I'm officially too old.
You're never too old.
Well, and I don't think I'll go nightclubbing these days. But to hear the kind of all the hope and anticipation and joy as you describe that time in your lives. So I guess what I'm kind of really interested in here, and I'm sort of going straight into the nitty gritty. Really, I'm not really giving you. I'm not buying you dinner first. I'm going straight in. Is what were your lives like? Because obviously, in order for somebody to make the decision to take their life, there's quite a lot of mental health problems leading up to this. So how was Ant sort of in himself before, like as you guys essentially kind of grew up together?
Well, he did have some mental health problems in our very early days. Kind of a result of just sort of going out too much, and he had a bit of a psychosis episode, which was quite scary. But yeah, this was many years before he died. So, we'd worked through it together, and it'd been a struggle. But I mean, there was always sort of a lingering after effect of that, where he was quite paranoid about things, about making noise or what people thought of him. It was always quite confusing to me because he was so concerned about what people he knew thought about him and were saying about him. But then, he could go into a room full of strangers and sort of like work the room and win people over. And, everyone was always like to me, particularly sort of, after he died and at the funeral, he was the life and soul of the party, and he was such a big personality. He'd been a holiday rep, he seemed like the most confident, outgoing, fun person there was. Obviously, when you're the partner, you know a bit more of the truth, but that seems like a very, very common theme with people who die by suicide.
I was going to say, like, all the hairs have gone off on my arm because this is so familiar for other women. And I've actually not interviewed a man who's lost a partner to suicide. But yes, this idea that they are the life and soul of the party. It's like the clown, isn't it? The smiling behind the mask sort of thing. Okay. And so how did that impact on your lives together? You're saying that it sort of left us like a sort of residual... I guess the words I've written here, like a people pleasing, like a desire to please people, to kind of get validation,
Yeah.
which again is really common with people who are struggling with mental health conditions. So was he sort of actively seeking counselling or anything during this time, or were you just like kind of, we'll deal with it when it comes up?
In the early days, he did. Yeah, he had quite a bit of treatment, but it was never sort of like a problem that affected our lives in any way. I did find that sort of towards the point where he died, he was getting a lot more paranoid, and he was. I don't know. I don't know if I would put it down to sort of the baby coming on the way, and I think it could be a trigger for men. Weirdly, and through Widowed and Young, I met 2 other girls at the time who both lost their parents to suicide, their partners to suicide when they were pregnant.
Wow.
Which I thought I was the only person in the world, so that was such a massive fall. Yeah, 2 of us. One of them was in Liverpool as well.
Stop it.
Yeah. So,
have you met up?
Yes, yeah. We're still friends.
Good, I like it.
And another girl was in the northeast as well, where I was living at the time. But yeah, I just wonder if someone has got these underlying issues, whether the whole sort of grand new role that you're going to be thrust into.
And I'm thinking, if you're a people pleaser and you're really worried about how you're perceived, and you probably some sort of insecurities, you would then probably be quite frightened about, am I going to be good enough?
Yeah.
And I parenthood puts pressure on everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Definitely.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you, I guess let's just go straight to it. Let's go to the crux. Let's jump straight in and tell me what happened, and then we can sort of work around that if you're happy to do that. So just tell me what happened.
Yeah, I'm funny you never listened to your story last week, and the parallels in our day are crazy, really. So yeah, I'll start. Well, we'd both been sort of working a lot away because we'd lived in Liverpool and then we'd moved up to the northeast. After my mum had died, actually, we moved up to the northeast to sort of be near his family and settle down up there. But yeah, we were both working away a lot, and we'd had this really big period of not being together for long periods of time. And
ships in the night.
Yeah, exactly. And this particular week, I'd gone away on the Tuesday, and I wasn't going to see him until the Saturday. And at the end of the week, he had a work night out on the Friday night. And he was sort of umming and ahhing about whether to go. Actually, it was a bit like, I want to knock this in the head, the going out and drinking and things, because I feel too bad afterwards. And I was like, well, just just go. It's a work night. Don't go crazy, and then just that can be the last one, like one last night out. And then he was staying in Manchester. So I got up the next morning on the Saturday morning, and I saw him. I looked at WhatsApp, and he was like flickered online at 7:30 a.m. and then went offline. But then it was just that whole day it was like, where is he? Do you know what I mean? Like just waiting for a reply to my message. Horribly, the last message I ever sent him that morning was a zombie emoji with 2 question marks. It's like,
I often send my friends a text, or I used to was party more, and I say, "Are you alive?" And I'm thinking,
basically, are you dead? And then I remember afterwards thinking, what if the police see that message and they think I knew it was going to happen? And then just,
oh my God, this is what the brain does, right?
But yeah, so it was just, it was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And I was like getting all the house ready and getting a meal cooked and everything ready for him to come home. And the whole day was just absolute torture. And got some friends over because everyone was, spoke to friends at this point, and, said I was worried, and people were going to the hotel to see if anything had happened. And then, I think it was about 4 or 5 p.m. a knock at the door. And then, frosted glass, high-vis jacket, just...
Oh,
I'll never forget that sight. Yeah. Even now when I see high-vis jackets, and just something inside me.
Or police lights go past.
But I opened the door and I was expecting him to be next to them, looking shifty, and he'd got into a little accident or something, but no, he wasn't there. And then, the police came in and just like, confirmed who I was and told me to sit down. And then, that was it. It was just the biggest shock. Like, that shock lasted so long. Yeah, I think I swore at the police. I think they told me to sit down. I was like, I didn't fucking want to sit down once happened.
I think you're allowed in those
Yeah, yeah,
circumstances. I reckon they'd probably hear worse.
yeah,
So something that I'm hearing from you, which is a little bit different to a lot of people I've spoken to, is the element of shock.
yeah,
Because quite often people will get themselves into such a terrible mental state that I guess it's like a terminal illness, like they're coming to the end of being able to fight it,
yeah,
but it starts to become obvious. They'll retreat, they'll become agitated, and possibly even make attempts on their life before they actually succeed.
yeah.
So for this to be such a shock for you, I'm really sorry, actually. Like, it's never a good thing, obviously, but to have it as just such a cataclysmic shock. Um, are you comfortable telling me what happened, how he did it? I mean, you don't have to if you
No,
don't
no,
want
that's
to.
fine. Yeah, he hung himself, which is
Yeah, I thought
probably like
that's
one of most. It's just so violent, isn't it?
yeah,
And
it tends to
it
be
was
how
in a
men.
hotel, so like the maid found him, and I just think of that poor woman finding him.
I know
Yeah, it is. It's just horrible. I mean, there's no nice way of doing that, but
it's so
yeah,
final, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's so
Because
final. And but then I just think that I wouldn't know where to start. You have to Google it and find out how to do it, or
right,
you know,
right.
like, because it could go wrong.
And
You know,
again,
yeah,
And again, I do ask quite typical questions. You never have to answer them.
yeah,
But was it his intention to die? Yeah, it was very clear that was his
yeah. He
intention.
left me a
Yeah.
note as well.
That was my next
Yeah,
question. He left you a note.
which apparently the coroner said, which is quite surprising. It's really, really rare to be left a note.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Because it's such an impulsive decision.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's why.
What did he say? What did he say?
He just said it was nothing to do with me. That we were soulmates, and he was really sorry that we called the baby the gummy bear at that point because it was one of when you've got the apps that tells you the size of the baby. Really sorry that he's never gonna meet gummy bear and that he'll love me forever. Just
Mm.
no.
And this just feels like such a waste. Because often there'll be marital difficulties. People
Yeah,
might have moved out of the family home. But for him to still be saying that he loves you and that
yeah,
he wishes he was going to be around, I can't imagine the kind of mental torment he must
no,
have been in to think that this was the best possible outcome for all three of you.
yeah,
And I know people can be quite judgmental about people who take their own lives, because if you are in a normal or a calm sense of mental health, it's not something that crosses your mind.
no,
And so you can't fathom why somebody would make that choice when they've got so much to live for. But of course, nobody ever does this if they're in their sound
no,
mind.
no. I know, and that's the horrible thing about it. Just imagining how he must have been in his own head in that hotel room on his own.
And had anything happened on the night out that had sort of
No,
triggered this? Or
no, no.
no,
No, and his toxicology report was he hadn't even had that much alcohol. Yeah,
really, and
no,
no drugs?
no, no.
Because I know cocaine is often a big factor
Mm,
in this kind of impulsivity.
yeah, no, nothing at all, which I was actually quite surprised about, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
And
yeah, in the evening before as well. So I'd gone to IKEA on the Friday evening,
rock
and
and roll on a Friday.
I know, pregnant life. But but yeah, and I've called him and said I'm at IKEA, and he was like, "What are you doing there, man?" Like, he was Geordie, by the way. That was an attempt at a Geordie accent, but he was like, What are you doing there? Just wait for me to come home. I don't want you carrying boxes on your own." And I was like, "But the next day, you're happy to let me carry on with the rest of my life on my own?"
It makes no sense, does it?
No,
It absolutely
no,
makes no sense. And that, I guess that is one of the really difficult things when somebody dies suddenly and you haven't got the answers.
yeah,
Because I lost Ben suddenly, different circumstances, but I
yeah,
have a lot of questions for him. Why did you go in
yeah,
the water when you've been sick on the boat? Why did you go in alone? And it doesn't make sense how they can go from being this kind of vibrant,
yeah,
strong man to just not existing anymore.
yeah,
And I know that one of the things I was able to tell my children is, dad didn't choose to leave you. Lots of children in your class won't have dads because they've chosen to leave the family
yeah,
home. Um, and that's something I was able to get quite some degree of comfort from. But of course, for you and it's a little boy you've got, isn't
yeah,
it?
Johnny,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's that's really. And sorry, it must be 4, right? 4 or
It's
5.
four, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Cool.
So having to, I'm going to go back again a little bit into sort of at the time, but that again, having to answer questions from your child as he
Mm,
begins to be aware of the fact that his dad's not here, because
yeah.
Tabby, my youngest, she was 6 months. So although she was out of me, she was, still in what I lovingly call the
Yeah.
plant phase, where they just need kind of watering and keeping
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
And it's really when she started school that it's sort of, she's even though obviously her siblings plus a parent, it was that sort of, I feel a little bit different now. I can
Yeah.
say, so having to explain that in a way that is accessible for a small child, how did you manage to do that?
So at the moment, I mean, I've told him that he used to have another daddy before, and
Mhm.
because Warren, my partner now, is always just been his dad. We met when Johnny was 8 months, so
Yeah,
I've just sort of explained to him that he used to have another daddy and he wasn't very well. Bless him, his little
yeah,
reaction when I told him that, he went, "Oh, so is he in heaven with your mummy now?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, he is." So
yeah,
that's enough for now. Yeah, a 4-year-old don't
yeah.
even understand the concept of death, let alone suicide. But yeah, I
No, and
think,
it's a really massive subject.
yeah,
But when I filled
that's,
in Tabby's book, when she's, they send home a little, I don't know if you started school yet, but when they start in reception, they send home like a little book that you can put pictures and stuff so they can get to know the child.
yeah,
And I was like, I've got two daddies. And I thought, they're going to open this page and be like, oh, how modern.
yeah,
But
yeah,
explaining that, one daddy, I can't remember if I said heaven or not, but when the other daddy is here, and it's, I guess, like we are in a world now where the nuclear family really doesn't exist very
yeah,
much. So
definitely
at
not.
least then not going to feel quite so different. Now you mentioned your partner there. So I'm really pleased to hear that you've met somebody and you're planning
Yeah,
your wedding, aren't you? When is that?
yeah, September, end of September. That's
Oh,
with
wow.
Debbie, so
So
as
not
well.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. But yeah,
Fantastic.
I sprinkled some of Aunt Sasha's there. I'm eternally grateful to Warren for that as well, because it was his first time to Ibiza. And I was like, "Do you mind if I take some ashes?" And he was just like, "No." And he just let me and my friends have this little moment. And it was sunset. And, it's just one of those beautiful, beautiful moments.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
And how did you guys meet?
online actually. It was a height of lockdown.
Modern
So
way?
there wasn't much choice really. There wasn't much of a choice. So yeah, lockdown. But it's funny. So yeah, I lost my dad when I was 20, and then I lost my mum when I was 34. And so at this point, I was a pregnant widowed orphan.
Oh,
I know. It's like,
no.
how tragic can you be? How am I going to get out of this?
And also not having your parents there to lean on. I always feel, okay.
Oh yeah.
I always feel really extra sad for people because my
Yeah.
parent, and I know not everyone has a brilliant relationship with their parents, but it was that calling my parents, them coming to my rescue. They lived with me, sort of held
Yeah.
me up when I couldn't do it myself. And who was that for you? Who supported you through
Oh, I had
this?
so many people. It was so lovely, Rosie. I had my auntie, who I'm super close to, my mum's sister. But I was actually in the process of moving house when lockdown started, and me and Johnny lived with her for 6 months from when Johnny was about 4 months old. So yeah, eternally grateful for that, because I was in a little safe bubble when I could have been completely stuck on my own with a newborn. So that was a
Yeah,
big
I mean, that
support.
is giving me like shivers, the
Yeah,
thought of having to
yeah.
navigate that and grief and lockdown.
But then
Because
friends
that,
as well. I had loads of friends up, and because we were living in Newcastle, and all my friends were most of my friends were in Liverpool. And people would come up and just spend weekends batch cooking with me, so I had food to eat. And then aunts, our mutual friends up in Newcastle, aunts' family. Like, I was very, very lucky to have people around. But then I
you
also
definitely
felt like
seem,
I wasn't anyone's top priority, and I wasn't anyone's child or partner. But,
yeah, that's a really good point actually,
yeah,
because when you are widowed, you go from having somebody that is, in most cases in your corner,
yeah,
has your back, to coin that horrible phrase, but it's who puts me first now. And I
yeah,
think you're right, that
yeah,
is a really scary place to be. And then to have lockdown on top of it, which we talk about being widowed as making you feel very isolated and, like you're a stranger in a different country. And of course, you literally were
yeah,
isolated
yeah.
because thank you to your aunt for taking care of
Yeah,
that, by the way,
it was
from
great
one widow to
lockdown for me
another.
though, because because of the position I was in, and I was just so vulnerable, and postpartum, and just in a horrible mess. Really, like you're bad enough when you've just had a baby anyway, aren't you? Let alone being freshly widowed. But yeah, there was no pressure to be going to baby groups or going out for brunch or seeing people. I walked every day and lost all my baby weight and came out like back near well.
Like out of your chrysalis.
Yeah, that's how I felt, and then met Warren. So it was actually a blessing for me, lockdown, really. It was exactly what I
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah, you got to sort of hunker down in that little bubble and bond with your baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I touched on at the beginning about the kind of stigma attached to a death from suicide,
Mhm.
and I just wondered whether you had how that had impacted on you. You know, people's reactions, because like I'm saying, people must have had questions. You know, was there
Yeah.
signs, and
Yeah.
that must have again, you must have felt a little bit like you were under the spotlight
Yes,
because people would have been
definitely.
coming to you to ask
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're questioning it for yourself as well. Is it, every little conversation that you've had, you going through it and thinking, yeah, is it something I've done? Or, but then, yeah. And as well, if you don't know why, it's kind of like, you wonder if you feel a bit judged, because it's actually quite a bad question, really, but it's everyone's first one. But it can make you just feel like, yeah, like you've missed something, or like you said, you're under
Yeah.
the spotlight.
And what about his friends? How did they react to this? Because they must have been just as shocked as you were.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just questioning themselves and, yeah, wondering if there was something they could have done. And it's just so complex, isn't it? It's you've got all
Yeah.
the usual feelings when you lose someone, but all those, all that confusion and guilt and anger as well. Anger was a massive one, as you can
Yeah.
imagine. It was furious.
Yeah, I used to get quite cross with Ben, particularly if the boys were sort of being, you know, just being kids, but, you know, being arseholes because they're kids. And then the baby would be crying. I wouldn't have slept. And I'd just be like, it's all right for you. You got to fucking die. I'm here picking up everything. And of course, you don't mean it, because we're still here. We still get to watch our babies grow. We still get to, you know, live our lives. But in that moment, you do feel like you've just been kind of, you know, left there holding the baby, literally in
Yeah,
our
literally, yeah.
cases.
I know.
Actually, I've got another question for you. What about the birth? Who was with you at the birth? Because that must have been really, really
Yeah,
tough.
Aunt's mum,
I mean,
actually.
birth,
Yeah,
Art's mum and
yeah. I actually,
Aunt's mum.
yeah, Aunt's mum, yeah. I elected for a C-section as well. I was like, I don't even want the uncertainty of, anything bad happening, not knowing when it's coming. I was just so scared. But yeah, I'd
Yeah,
recommend an elected C-section to anybody. It was really easy.
that's great.
Yes, amazing. Amazing's probably not the right word, but from some of the best horror stories I've heard.
Well, actually, I had elective first time because he was breech, and then I did try and labour with my second because I
Yeah,
thought I don't want to be, you know, recovering with a toddler, laboured and then had a C-section
yeah,
anyway. So when
yeah,
it came to the third one, I was like, just book me in. There is
yeah.
not going to be any discussion about a natural birth after that. And I feel like I'm really kind of poking you to try and sort of dig into your grief a little bit. But
Okay.
the moment that you held little Johnny in your
Mhm.
arms, like, does he look like his dad? I mean, that must have it's an emotional thing anyway, having a baby.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking to see him sort of reflected back at you.
Yeah, it was weird as well, and just going back a little bit, but
Please do.
when we lost Aunt, a lot of people were like, "Oh, at least you've got that baby," and I was like, "Are you kidding? That's literally the worst thing about it." It's like, because
Mhm.
I've always got a part of him, but I can't ever fully move on from it because, and I did resent it a little bit, and also I was like, you know what, I just want to get really drunk or just go off traveling or just escape, but I was sort of stuck.
Yeah.
But looking back now, definitely it was a blessing because I didn't turn to alcohol. I had to look after myself. I had to get myself through. And yeah, and this is sort of a way of, telling Johnny more as he gets older, like he's a little lifesaver. Anything could have happened to me. I didn't care about myself that much. So to be able to tell your mum to tell you that one day, I would just want him to be really proud of me.
I got again the old goosebumps have gone. They've gone up. It's. I always described my life before, much like you described yours with Ant. It was really, really great. Ben and I met. I just finished university, and we had that kind of those best years. You know, when you got
Yeah.
disposable income, we were living in
Yeah.
London, just had an absolutely brilliant time. But when he died, and my children, they gave me a reason to get up. They did. They stopped me retreating under the duvet with a bottle of gin. But it did sometimes feel, and in my head, I've got this kind of picture of like a woman like pulling her kids up a mountain, and then you keep sliding back, and you have to kind of get to the top. But much like you, I credit them with giving me that reason to get up in the morning. And with my little one, she was always called her the cherry on the cake, because life was really good and we didn't need another child. We had 2 healthy children, but it was that, okay, I'm coming up to 40. Let's just have one more. And then she was a very happy, smiley baby. And we used to bath, my mum used to bath her in a bucket and stuff, like as you do. And it just, and I felt very much that I didn't want her to grow up sad, because obviously we know that children feed off your emotions. So I was not in lockdown, so I did have to do the baby groups, but I'd be like, baby singing Grace is like, but it got me out of the house, pushed me to meet other people, and having to almost rebrand yourself, because you're not the same person that you were. So the people that you meet from that point onwards are going to meet you as a widow, as somebody who is on their own, with their children. And that's a really, like, when do you bring it up in conversation at these baby groups? Like, when do you drop the dead husband vomit?
We have it all the time at nursery, even now. Because, going back to your earlier question, like, Johnny didn't look like Ant when he was first born. He actually looked like my dad. He was blonde. But Ant was really dark, like really dark hair. But now he's got really dark hair, and he looks a lot more like Ant. But Warren and I, both blonde. So sometimes you'll be at a kid's party and someone will be like, oh, it doesn't look like you. Where'd you get his dark hair from? And you're like, I've just met you. I don't really want to tell you this at the moment. But
and then I feel I can't tell half the story, because John and I have got, so his daughter is in the same year group as my middle son. So they're not currently in the same school, but for a time they were. And so people would be like, oh, are they twins? And then you're like, no. And then I don't want people to think necessarily that Ben had walked out on his kids. So I'm like, within about 10 seconds of meeting somebody, I can like blow their mind and leave them like, But of course, we're still sort of getting But and I also used to find I would be protecting other people's feelings. I'm thinking, why am I doing this? It happened to me. Like, you're gonna hear it all.
With funnily enough, Johnny's just got his new school for September, and it's a C of E one nearby. And we would have had no chance of getting into this school. You must know yourself, the distances are so tight and they're so tough to get into. I was really panicking about it one day, and for some reason, we don't go to church or anything, not religious in the slightest. But I looked at the admissions policy for this school, and number 2, like before siblings, before going to church or anything, it was like if the parent has if the child has lost a parent by death, and and you're like, can we use this? Is this really bad taste to use this? And so we used it, and he's in. But now it's like, what school is he going to? And we're like, they're going to ask us if we go to church. You're going to say we don't live nearby. We're going to have to tell them that we went down with dead dad.
Like, you're there every Sunday, doing your communion. Well, actually, I moved the boys' school. As it turned out, it was prior to Hector getting an autism diagnosis, and I just knew that the school weren't able to support him. So I won't bore you with details, but I moved schools, and they've also moved again. My kids are like just moving around all the time. But the head teacher there, she sort of said, well, we technically don't have enough space, but because of their dad dying, and like we can use that with, and that, I think that was a Church of England school. And you feel really guilty, because you're like, oh God, am I leapfrogging the queue? But also, it's a fucking awful thing to happen. Let them have some pluses from it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if the schools are aware of it, they're going to get a bit more support, aren't they?
Yeah, and what I found is, as they get older, they are less keen to sort of share what's happened. So my eldest is in secondary, and I said to him, I was like, do your friends know? And he's like, no, I haven't told them. And I thought, okay, so but it's giving them the choice of whether or not they want to share it as well, which is quite important. Definitely at primary school, because I mean, it's your son sounds to me like Tabby, because John and I got together when she was about 18 months old. So really 2 actually. So, but she's not really known any different. So she doesn't remember before he was in her life. And so for her, things like Father's Day, it's just John goes. She doesn't really make that connection. But I do think that the school sometimes, and he may be completely different, but sometimes, like, for example, we were driving home from a music class one day in my friend's car, and her daughter went, oh, there's your dad, and pointed at John. And she went, "That's not my dad. My dad's dead." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I think she said it at nursery as well. So it's that
It's
kind of,
in
if you
there,
forget to
isn't
tell
it?
somebody, they're like, "No, don't be ridiculous. I've met your
Yeah,
dad."
yeah. Yeah, I know, like, and then Johnny hasn't mentioned it too much. Like, we made a conscious decision to tell him early because he thought it was really important. Like, imagine dropping that on a 13-year-old, like, full
Yeah, I
identity
completely
crisis
agree.
meltdown. But it's
Yeah.
in there. He doesn't mention it a lot. But one day I was putting a necklace on and went, "Oh, your dad got me this," and he was like, "Daddy in heaven?" I was like, "No, the other one." But I didn't realise he'd taken it in so much. But they do.
Yeah, I remember, yeah, that night it happened, on my phone, Googling how to tell a child
Yeah,
that their parent has died. Not something I ever thought would be in my search history, if I'm
yeah,
honest.
no,
But
absolutely not.
all the advice to be saying, you'd be as honest and open as you can in an age appropriate way. Use the
Yeah,
words like they've died,
yeah,
because particularly when to say he was lost, I knew even in that kind of early hours, I knew that would be very confusing, because children are very literal, and they would think, well, if he's lost, it's like when I lost my
yeah,
shoes, it will turn up, kind
yeah.
of
We'll
thing.
find them.
Mm. And how's poor old Warren's going to get dragged into it now. Sorry, Warren. How has it been? I mean, I'm asking you to speak on his behalf, but obviously he's met you. You've been through a massive trauma,
Mm,
bigger than most people ever experience in their lives, and you've got an 8-month-old baby,
yeah,
which I consider a plus. But obviously, when you go dipping your toe into the dating, that's
yeah.
you're not dating just for you. You're dating for your
I know you're
children
making
as well,
sure.
which
Yeah,
whole other dimension. So
it's
how
mad,
was
isn't
that
it?
for you?
Yeah, there was a few times like you just think people would just see like widow and like relationship status widowed, and then you've got a child, and people would just be like, no chance. I thought I was like, yeah, on the scrap heap pretty much at
Pariah.
36. Yeah, exactly. No, he's really embraced it, and he's got 2 daughters of his own, 2 older daughters. And yeah, he said he'd always wanted a little boy, and he was quite happy with the package, and he knew Johnny needed a dad, and he was willing to step in and be that role. So
Oh,
yeah, he's
that's great.
embraced
Yeah, the feeling.
it. I think some people just get though, don't they, that she'd been through these kind of things. You do change, don't you? And I think sometimes for the better. You've got
Yeah.
breaks your heart, but I think it makes your heart bigger at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think to have people can again be quite judgmental when we do find love again,
Yeah,
because when your person dies, much like you, I think I was I think I just turned 37 like
yeah,
2 weeks before. And I can remember thinking to myself, well, that's it. I've just got to get the kids to adulthood, and by
yeah,
then I'll be just this miserable husk of a woman that's been on her own staring at, reality telly. And I really thought that was my future, because that's how I felt. I felt like my soulmate, my best friend, my love was gone, and therefore that was it for me. Now, I've quite often compare this to sort of having kids, in terms of when you have one child, you think, I remember being pregnant with my second and going, I'm never going to love this child as much. But actually, I think there's something when you lose somebody and you love them so much, you know how that feels.
yeah.
And you don't want to live the rest of your life without that.
No,
So to have
absolutely.
the courage to open your heart again it takes a lot of guts,
Yeah,
because you've been hurt in the most horrible possible way. And I felt like I had no tolerance for bullshit, no game
yeah.
playing.
Like the small
Like
stuff.
it was take me as I am, I'm a
Yeah.
little bit mental at times. I might just burst into tears about my dead husband whilst I'm doing the washing up. There's no rhyme or reason for it. And actually to find somebody that is able to give you the space to do that and to support
Yeah,
you while you do it, that is a
yeah.
real blessing. And I'm
Yeah,
really glad that you found that.
me too. Yeah, and it's strange because my mum she was 43 when we lost my dad. My dad was only 46. And she met my stepdad, Danny, a year later. And I remember at the time, and I'm quite ashamed to say, and I wish I could apologise, I was quite judgy about it, because I was like, how can you replace my dad so quickly? Like, I still haven't got my dad, and now you've got a new partner. But
Yeah.
she found happiness again. And I think when you're in this situation, and this is the point of the podcast, I think for you, is evidence that you can be happy again. There is light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
and seeing that my mum was happy again, it was the first thing I thought about. That, well, my mum was happy again after losing her husband young, so I can be.
And that's the other thing.
Sweet.
When you're a kid and your mum's in her 40s, they feel like they're ancient.
Yeah, I always say
But
this.
we could have another 40 odd years. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd like to think we will. So
yeah.
to spend more of your life alone than you did with them, what a tragedy.
I know.
What a
Yeah.
tragedy. And for some people, that is it. Actually my grandma, she lost her husband quite young and she never met anybody else. And I don't think it was exactly her final words. That's very dramatic. But
Yeah.
in one of her final conversations with my mum, she said, I wished I'd met somebody. I
Oh,
wish I'd met someone else. And I feel like I don't want to look back on my life with any regrets. I'd rather take the chances and fall on my face than not take the chances.
yeah.
But it is a leap of faith when you're involving children. That does add that extra fear, because my worry was, what if, and actually it nearly came true because John very nearly died in COVID. So
Yeah.
it could have, my kids could have ended up losing 2 dads before they hit double figures, which
I can imagine.
and it didn't happen. And we are, it's a slightly dysfunctional, very noisy. It's like a zoo, my house. I looked after the friends' children yesterday, and they're very quiet children, and they walked in, it's like this wall of noise, and there's, people whacking each other with a towel and things. It's carnage. But it's
But you love
what
it.
we've got. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I love being part of a big family, and I love the fact that we have this really open dynamic where there's no questions that are off limits. We can talk about Ben and John's late wife Sarah. It's all very much, I guess, 4 of us in the marriage
Yeah.
in a weird
We say that.
way.
Yeah, we say that. There's 3 of us bringing Johnny up. Just one of them, unfortunately, isn't here. We say that all the time.
Yeah, he contributed to the genetics, so
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
done his part.
Yeah. It's
And I'm going to ask a question which you absolutely don't have to answer because it's quite a difficult one. But because of the nature of how Ant died, do you worry about Johnny? Do you worry that he might have inherited that sort of predisposition to mental health?
yeah, definitely. And I think, when again, when I start explaining the details a bit more to him as he gets older, just sort of hammering home the importance of talking to people, talking to
Yeah.
someone.
Because men of Ant's generation, they just, we didn't, and particularly Northern men, especially, they really
Yeah.
are kind of locked down those feelings. And again, sorry, make it about me, but this is sort of the only way I can relate is because I am in recovery from addiction. My dad was an alcoholic. He's been sober for, I'm going to say, 30 years. My brother he's sober. So I know that chain of addiction runs through my family line. And so for my kids, I'm like, my eldest is 14. He's not into like going out yet. He's very different to me as a teenager. Yeah, I know. I'm like, just stay there for a
though, do
minute. But to be able to kind of talk about drinking and saying, just be aware that there's an increased risk for you because, it runs in the family. And I guess it's all to do with awareness and talking.
Yeah.
You're right. Just getting them to even little things like identify the feelings of anxiety. Like the word anxiety didn't exist when we were younger, right? Like
No, didn't it at all? No.
And I even really struggled with giving myself that label because I was like, I don't want to be one of those people that's anxious. But actually, it's a really debilitating condition. And by saying that we have I kind of, I don't know, it enables that dialogue to happen.
Yeah, and I think more is being done, and there's charities like Calm About now, which, are encouraging men to open up and talk, but I still don't think it's enough. But I'm pretty sure that schools will be really on this kind of thing now. I don't know if you've experienced where children are encouraged to talk about the mental health and the feelings a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, so lots and lots has changed. My eldest is in a really lovely secondary school, so they had a woman come in to talk about like neurodiversity in women and things. So they're very, very kind of ahead of the curve in terms of that sort of thing. But the thing that really upsets me is like the fact that other kids will pick on kids for not having a mum or dad dying. Like that still goes on. And I just think, that makes me feel really sad for humans. It's never happened to my kids. So I'm not saying like it happens everywhere. And I think it just depends on what kind of nasty little scroach you've got in their class, to be honest.
I think people do stuff like that because they're scared of different things, and they're probably scared of it and the thought of it happening to them.
Yeah.
So
that is a really key point because a parent dying is the kind of core of every Disney film, every children's book, success after adversity. And so they are surrounded with images from such a young age or stories of how, this would be the worst thing that ever happens. And then you have to stand by as it happens.
Yeah.
and try and explain to your child why that horrible, terrible thing happened to them. And I think in a way it is a blessing when they're younger, because although there is that horrible feeling of them never having met and having no real genuine core
Mm.
memories, I think for them it's probably is easier because they're not having
Yes.
to process all that grief as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, you mentioned there, the support. What was that support group you mentioned? I'm just going to jot that down.
The charity.
Can't, yeah,
Calm.
so
Yeah.
oh, it's because a good friend of mine, actually, her son took his life.
Oh,
He was only 13 as well. It was just, it
oh,
was really, I mean,
that's
it was an awful
horrendous.
tragedy. I know. And
Oh,
his dad set up a charity called Ollie, which is One Life Lost is Enough, in his memory. So
yeah.
there is work being done, and actually, one of an acquaintance of mine, her husband runs a charity called Dad Space.
Yeah.
So kind of
There's that.
provide, because mums tend to, we meet up for coffee, like we go
I
to
know.
the play dates, that sort of thing, where we, sometimes I'll have conversations on school gate that I wouldn't even necessarily have with my therapist,
Yeah.
and for men that it just isn't there necessarily, that network.
No.
And especially if they're not working, like if they're not in an office, because that's the other thing, we're getting more and more isolated.
Yeah.
Everyone's still working from home in a lot of cases. Sorry, I went off on a
Yeah.
tangent there. Um,
No, it's okay.
I'm going to take you back again 5 years ago, if I may, and just things like, just go curious about how things like going back to work were, because did you go back to work after you had Johnny, or were you able to take a sort of prolonged leave of absence?
I did go back for a little bit before I had Johnny, actually. So I died in the August. And I think I went back to work just for a few weeks, maybe about a month in the November. And I did that purely because I didn't want my bereavement leave and maternity leave to be as the same thing. I thought I'm only going to get, I wasn't ever
Ever?
planning on having any more children, but I didn't want to, it to be tainted by that. I wanted to have my maternity leave and finish for maternity rather than just, blend
Yeah,
it all
get the
into one.
balloons and the
So,
send up.
yeah, and I needed a bit of normality as well. There's
Yeah,
only so long
yeah,
you
that.
can move about, isn't there, really?
And I think that structure is important.
Yeah.
I wasn't working. Well, I was actually signed off sick because I was teaching water babies, baby swimming, and
Yeah.
I was getting terrible migraines from being in these hydro pools. So I was actually signed off sick anyway. And then I went see my GP after Ben died, and they sort of signed me off again.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah. And then I kind of sort of ran his business enough to keep the wolf from the door, shall we say, but without any huge degree of success.
Yeah.
But even that, I found that enormous responsibility of like, oh my God, I got to keep the household running. Like, what am I going to do? Because I'm used to having two incomes. In fact, we were actually used to having one income because, like I say, I wasn't working at the
Yeah.
time. But I do think having that structure, it was one of the things that I was advised to with the kids, get them back to school really quickly. Don't let them stay off, because the other thing is it turns into almost a celebration from their perspective, because people are turning up bringing gifts and being really lovely and kind,
Yeah.
but that's quite confusing, because it's like, I'm getting good stuff, but because my dad died.
I know, yeah, you don't sort of link those two things together, do you? Yeah. Tricky one.
And have you got, like, I know you said you scattered some of his ashes in Ibiza, but have you got somewhere in the UK that you can take Johnny, and sort of as he gets older, he'll be able to sort of, I don't know. Like, I've got a memory stone at a church with like nothing of Ben there because he's in the channel. And initially I thought it was somewhere we'd go quite a lot as a family, have picnics, and
Yeah.
we don't really know.
No, no, like his parents have got some, so I don't know if they've got some in their garden actually, maybe, but I take Johnny up quite often to visit them. Yeah, I want him to, know all about the family, and they can tell him stuff about as he grows up. And also, I just think how much love must his mum have for that little boy. And yeah, I want him to feel that love as well. Because same as you, listen to your story as well, that you had to break the news to his mum. It's like horrendous.
Yes, yes. I mean, talk about being the bearer of the worst possible news.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's Ben's mum and I mean, they live on the Isle of Wight, so I don't get to see them as often as I would. I love the Isle of Wight, actually, but unfortunately trying to get an Airbnb on the Isle of Wight in the school holidays is but we do try and get down there at least once or twice a year. And nothing can repair what they've lost. But I think my eldest particularly is like a carbon copy of his dad. He's the same height as his dad was. And also I think for her to see that, and I think to see that I'm doing an all right job of it, like to see that they're thriving and they're loved and they're safe, because I don't think I knew what kind of mum I would be after this happened. I wasn't the best mum for the first year, certainly, but they don't appear to have been massively impacted, which sounds like a horrible thing to say because it was such an awful thing. But if you were to come to my house, you would not think, oh, these are full bereaved children. Like they don't have attachment issues or behavioural issues. That they're not having nightmares and all the things that I was terrified that they would have, that they would never feel, and to use normal. And actually they do, and they are. And it's not this, it is a thing that, it's a terrible thing. It's the worst thing that can happen to them. And it happened. There's nothing that we can do about that.
Yeah.
But what we can do is help how it defines them, or how it doesn't define them, actually, because there's more to them.
Yeah. It's the same for us as well. Like, define was a word. Like, I was really scared of being defined by it. I thought I was just going to be like in black with like a widow stamp on my head for the rest of my life. Then, I remember speaking to a close friend of mine at the time, and I said that to him. I was like, I don't want it to define me. And he was just like, don't let it. And I was like, okay, yeah, actually, that's really good advice. But you don't, all you can do.
I can still remember the first time I wore makeup on the school run, because I felt like I was being really disloyal, because, first of all, it's like just the dark shadows and, just head down. And then gradually I sort of started to put a bit of lipstick on, and it's really, you don't want to be, nobody ends up, dressed in black with a veil. That's a myth. That's a storybook. That's not true. We don't cease to be alive anymore because they've died. And yes, it's a horrible time and it's really tough, but keeping hold of your own identity is really vital, because otherwise you do let yourself be defined by it. And that's when you get stuck, and you've got, you literally, I never wanted to just be waiting to die, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think that's your alternative, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And sort of having the double new identity of a widow and a mum at the same time. Like,
and for you, you're going to be a wife again. That's because then you, I actually stole this from Nora McKinney, who's an American podcast host.
And Widows Club, my guidebook at the time. It's made me laugh so much.
I was in the Hot Young Widows Club. I was one of I'm still friends with a lot of people from there. And we went to America in the summer, and I managed to meet up with a couple of those. So I've got such a soft spot for them. But it's where I heard that kind of alive and dead husband thing. And I was like, oh my God, you can't do that. And then I just started into conversation. And, there is my late husband, he's dead. Like, he's not late, he's dead. So, or if I'm being, a little bit more tactful, I might say my first husband. But of course, that leads to other questions. But how are you feeling about embarking into another marriage and married life together?
It's really exciting. Feels like, it's always hard, isn't it, as well, using the word lucky in this situation, but I do. But I feel very lucky to have another chance, and with someone who I've had to make no compromises with. Like, you must have felt the same as well. It's like, because of your widow status and all your children, you thought, I'm going to have to compromise on something, and I'm not going to get my perfect person here, but I have. And so.
And I think your idea of what's perfect can change as well, because you've changed. Like, when I met Ben, I was just out of university, so we were, he was older than me, but I knew nothing about the world. Whereas I've come into this relationship as an adult. We're both grown ups. We've got and there's a lot of, we've both got baggage, of course we have, but we've also got an insight into the world that most people, fortunately, don't have to have. And I think you mentioned earlier that it makes you different. And I think, yes, in some ways it makes you better, because I have a lot more compassion. I'm a lot more empathetic, and those things that I've been able to bring to this relationship. And it's not always been easy. We've both had breakdowns. We've both had some really tough times, but that kind of core connection is what's kept us going. And you say about feeling lucky. My sister-in-law's called me lucky once, and it was something about, I think it was going on holiday. I was like, I'm not lucky. Like, but now I do feel lucky
Okay
because
to
I
say
was
it
loved.
yourself, I think.
Yeah, and I look around at my
Fortunate,
social group
probably
and
the
how
word.
many of my fortunate maybe, how
Yeah.
many of my social group have got really partners or husbands, or they're going through really difficult. I think actually no, I had a really uncomplicated, lovely, happy relationship with Ben. I was loved so completely by him, and then to be able to find a level, it's a different love, it's a different relationship, but to be able to find somebody that feels that way about me again, it's
Yeah.
yeah, I am lucky actually, because a lot
Yeah.
of people don't get to feel that once.
Yeah. Do you sometimes feel a bit sad? I do, that you didn't get to enjoy the times that you and Ben spent, sort of like the carefree, traveling without children?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
same.
yeah, there is. And John and I went to Reading Festival. It could be 3 years ago now. And oh my god, the average age at Reading Festival is about 17. It seems to be where they go after they've done their exams. So we were at one point, Stormzy was on, and we were like, trying to fit it. And this couple, they went. I think we had a little kiss, and this young kids went, "I hope we're like you when we're old." And we were like, "Oh god!"
Yeah.
But we wanted to do that. We wanted to do the festival thing because we'd taken the kids to a festival, but we've not got to do it ourselves. So we try now. Now they're a little bit older, and they're because for a while, one of my children, I couldn't really leave him at all. He had some quite severe attachment issues. But we're going up to Manchester. Actually, we're going up to Manchester on Saturday to see a band, and it's we started trying to. The difference is you get to do it with a little bit more disposable income as well, so you can stay in a nice hotel instead of
when you
somebody else.
do get to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think you appreciate when you're young anyway, do you? But now, if you have a night out or even like a night or two away, like, this is amazing. I'm so happy.
But I do need a comfortable bed and a high thread count these days.
Yeah. But we can afford them now, we're old.
Yeah. In fact, my eldest he's doing the Duke of Edinburgh, and I've just had to buy camping stuff. And he's like, "Do you know how to put up a tent?" I was like, "No." You've known me for 14 years. Of course I don't know how to put up a tent. Don't be ridiculous. But yes, it is. It is. You don't have that shared history. You haven't grown up together. You haven't gone through a pregnancy together. You haven't, bought your first house together. All the firsts have sort of been taken away from you.
Yeah.
But I like to think that we'll stick around long enough that we'll get the kids through to adulthood. We'll sell this house, and then perhaps we'll go around the world. And then I think, oh, I shouldn't delay it. We should just do it. We should pull the kids out of school and do it. And then I realize I got 4 kids, and I really don't want to.
Maybe I could do it with one.
Yeah. Well, my plan was, I had this sort of half-assed plan in my head. Ben had some investments, as I won't go into details, but they didn't work out. And I thought, well, perhaps if I've got the money, I'll take them out to school. I'll get like a nanny, and we'll just go see the world. Not thinking about the practicalities of weeking 3 kids around the world. But the one thing that I will spend any disposable income we have on is travel, because I think that is the one gift, the best gift that I can give my kids, is to show them it doesn't have to be Bali and Indonesia. I'd like to be, but just to go and see different parts of the world. I think that's the best use of your finances.
Most important thing for me too. Johnny's been all over. I think he's been on about 20 flights already. He's only 4.
So has it?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. You start them young, they're great travellers, because Tabby's brilliant. I mean, I introduced the iPad a lot younger than I might have done on a flight to Mexico. I'm like, there you go, just Peppa Pig for 8 hours, off you go. Well, it has been absolutely lovely to talk to you today. I'm sorry that the reason we're speaking is because of because we're in the club nobody wants to be in. But I really like your attitude. I feel like you are such a joyful person, and I'm not going to lie to you, when I saw that you'd lost your husband to suicide when you were pregnant, I'm thinking, gosh, this is going to be a tough interview, because they are like that. And actually I feel like you're this real ray of sunshine. And I know you said in your application that you wanted to show people that the worst thing can happen, and that you can still build a life and find joy in the world, and you absolutely have done that. And I think that you should be immensely proud of yourself. And when your little boy is older, I think he will look you in the eyes and thank you. Right. My eldest has, actually. He's very emotionally intelligent, and he said to me, I just completely out of the blue, Mum, I just want you to know that we really appreciate what you did and what you continue to do. And I was like, oh, stop it. But carry on. So I think that, when it takes them a while to realise how amazing we are, but they do get there eventually. So I think
that's any kids though, isn't it, to be fair?
Oh yeah. Oh God. I rang my mum from the hospital when I had my first baby and just said sorry, because I was like, I get it now. That's how you felt about me, and I just kept putting myself into danger.
But yeah, I'm hope to write a book. So, well, I've started writing a book. But it is actually called "What's the Worst That Could Happen." So I've got a few chapters down, but it's difficult. It's difficult finding the time. And as you know, when you've got children and you work, you don't want to then spend your free time writing about trauma in your life. But I feel like I've got a good story to share, and like you say, I want to provide hope to people.
Well, this podcast is my book because I've wanted to write a book for a long time. I knew it was going to be called Widowed AF.
Mm-hmm.
I had the Instagram page and I just could not get that first page done. I could not do it. And so I just was like, oh, maybe I should try a podcast, thinking I'd do about 5 episodes and then wimp out. Here we are. But it's given me that outlet to talk about it. And I think I may use the content from the podcast to do some sort of a book at some point. But we'll see. We'll see, one challenge at a time. But you let me know if you get any further along with that book, and I will absolutely share it because I'd love to read it. I really would. Take care of yourself, my darling. Give that little boy a squeeze. And I really hope that you will be kind enough to share some wedding pictures with me when you get married.
Of course. Lovely to meet you, Rosie. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. And for anybody out there that has been affected by today's topics, you can send me a message. You contact me on Instagram or at widowedaf.com. And I can, of course, pass any messages over to you as well if you're willing to answer them.
Lovely, yeah, definitely.
But for now, everybody out there, you take care of yourselves, and I will be back with you soon with another interview. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode helpful, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you think someone else may benefit from this, please do share. We'd also really appreciate a quick review. It helps more people find the show. Thank you again, and see you next time on Widowed AF.